that Trump's allies have a plan that, if all else fails, to eliminate medication abortion through executive action.
Nearly two-thirds of America's annual abortions are conducted using mifepristone. Attorney Carolyn McDonald of Americans United for Life told AFN the court ruled medical professionals did not have legal standing.
I don't see this as a case discussing the merits of whether the FDA approved mifepristone or deregulated it in a lawful manner. Rather, what I see it is the Supreme Court is even-handedly discussing and honing in on its standing doctrine, but using this case as basically the vehicle for doing so.
The court said medical professionals are already protected by federal law. McDonald suggests there could be other litigation making its way through the courts to deal with how the FDA handled the drug. Fox Weather reports the strong El Nino pattern that had a significant influence on major weather pattern shifts over the past year, including relentless storms in California and the South, while leaving much of the North with a well below average snow season during the winter, has come to an end. NOAA announced in its monthly update today. And looming on the horizon, a flip to the opposite La Nina pattern, which could enhance the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season. Fox Weather's Stephen Morgan.
The official transition to La Nina likely happening sometime this summer. Between the months of July and September, NOAA, the Climate Prediction Center, saying there's a 65% chance that we'll see La Nina emerge.
By the time we get to fall and winter, the La Nina phase typically correlates to dry weather in the southern U.S. and cooler, wetter weather in the Pacific Northwest and parts of the North. And the wet weather continues in Florida. Fox Weather reports a general 3 to 8 inches of rain has fallen across southwest and south Florida, while areas along Interstate 75 in the Everglades and Interstate 95 in the Miami metro area have picked up 15 to 25 inches of rain. Governor Ron DeSantis declared a state of emergency for Broward, Collier, Lee, Miami-Dade, and Sarasota counties due to the severe flooding. Florida pro-life groups are depending on the truth to defeat an abortion constitutional amendment. AFN's Charlie Butts reports.
The proposed amendment, which would completely open the door to abortion and negate pro-life laws, is on the November ballot. However, Linda Bell of Florida Right to Life tells AFN there was some chicanery involved in the petition drive to get it on the ballot.
Florida Department of Law Enforcement has arrested 2 people with ballot fraud in both Florida and Kansas. And it looks like they falsified by forging multiple signatures on the Florida initiative, and they are being charged with multiple counts. And this puts into doubt the rest of the signatures that were gathered in this petition grabbing.
In addition, Bell tells AFN she was present 3 different times at signature gathering booths where the workers were lying to get signatures.
So once again, we have come to the conclusion that the only way the pro-abortion leftist extremists can win is by lying, and the only way that we're going to be able to beat back this deceptive Amendment 4 is by telling people the truth.
Bell adds that polls indicate both sides of the issue are neck and neck, so the deciding factor is likely going to be whether pro-lifers show up at the polls and cast a no vote. I'm Charlie Butts.
And that is a wrap on news at this hour. We invite you to go to afn.net for more. For American Family News, I'm Robert Thornton.
The rule of law in our country is being weakened through frequent aggressive attacks by radical progressives. You can count on AFA Action to let you know how our constitutional religious freedoms are being destroyed. You can join the fight by responding to action alerts and by giving to AFA Action today. When you do, you'll help protect our rights and you'll get free access to David Barton's mini-documentary, God in the Constitution. Find out more and give at afaaction.net.
Darkness is not an affirmative force. It simply reoccupies the space vacated by the light.
This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
It should be uncomfortable for a believer to live as a hypocrite.
Delivering people out of the bondage of mainstream media and the philosophies of this world.
God has called you and me to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment. Let's not miss our moment.
And now, the Hamilton Corner.
You know, a quote that I've read, and it really stirs my heart, and I believe it's attributed to Benjamin Franklin. He said that everybody loves the fruits of freedom, but few are willing to tend the tree that bears the fruits. Hi, Alex McFarland here. So honored that you're listening. This is the Hamilton Corner on the American Family Radio Network, and we have a great show, especially a great show if you, like myself, care about the future of this country. And you understand, like so many have, even historians and sociologists and political science theorists have understood that really kind of the X factor, the secret sauce, if you will, woven into the fabric of America has been Christianity. It's very often referred to as our Judeo-Christian foundation. In our judiciary, our government, our politics, the way we adjudicate trials, what we call due process, and certainly the constitutionally protected freedoms, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Even JFK, Democrat JFK, in January of 1961, as President Kennedy was being inaugurated, he gave a speech and he said, "The rights of man come not from government, but from God. The role of government is not to give you rights. Far from it," said JFK. "The role of government is to guard the rights you've already been given by Almighty God, your Creator." Well, to talk about this, and maybe, later on we will take some calls, and the number, if you want to weigh in on the conversation, is 888-589-8840. That's 888-589-8840. But we've got a guest, a gentleman with whom I spoke several weeks ago, Jon Hauser, and he's an author. I just was very impressed with Jon Anthony Hauser. He's written a book called The Destruction of Liberty, Creating the American Socialist Aristocracy. Now, there's a lot in that title that we can unpack, but first of all, I want to thank him for making time and welcome him now to the American Family Radio Network, author, speaker, Jon Anthony Hauser. Thanks for being with us, sir.
I'm very glad to be here, and I very much appreciate the invitation.
Indeed. So before we get into your book and just the subject about, our liberties, very often taken for granted, that I believe we need to fight and protect, give us a little background on yourself, Mr. Hauser.
I grew up on a dairy farm in northern Wisconsin, and so I was very close to nature and very close to hard work as well, starting at a very early age. Went away to college and got degrees in political science and history, and embarked on a career in politics almost immediately. I announced I was going to run for the Wisconsin legislature about a month after I graduated college. I had not yet turned 22 years old. I lost that campaign, but it was very close. I wound up going to work for the governor of Wisconsin and some of the legislators in the state of Wisconsin for about 10 years, but became very disillusioned by what I saw, and eventually joined the private sector, and I've been a part of the private sector ever since. But I have never lost the desire to see this nation live up to its ideals in its politics. And I wrote this book because as I've watched in the last, especially decade or so, we have dug ourselves into a hole deeper and deeper and deeper into just a very cynical sort of frame of mind and a very, I think, destructive ideology that's called secular humanism, or it's really what it is socialism, and it's draining the moral fiber and spiritual fiber of our country. And by the way,
indeed,
that's no accident.
Well, speaking of Wisconsin, do you plan to be in Milwaukee during the RNC convention this summer?
I probably will not. I reside in the state of Indiana now, and I have not taken an active role in politics or political campaigns in the last 20 years because I haven't wanted to wade back into that mess. There may be a time when I do, but I don't see it this summer.
When you hear people, well, like President Trump say, drain the swamp, what does that statement mean? You, having had firsthand exposure to where our government is at the present moment, what does drain the swamp mean?
To me, it goes right back to the subtitle of this book, which is Creating the American Socialist Aristocracy. And, I've posted some things on social media recently where I got some blowback on that, where people say, well, those two things don't have anything to do with one another. They're, in fact, opposites. And I said, well, in the introduction to my book, I say that very same thing, that on the surface it would seem that's true. But if you look at how history has played out and how socialism has developed over history, they are exactly compatible. Every socialist nation, every socialist regime that's ever taken power has done so, saying we are the party of equality, we are the party of fairness, we are the party of the new word is equity and inclusion. And yet, when the socialists come to power, what is it that they have always done? They have simply disposed of the old power structure, the old aristocracy, if you will, and replaced it with themselves at the top. And we're watching that happen in real time in this country right now with a two-tiered system of justice and economics, where if you agree with the party in power, you're protected. You get a sweetheart deal. Legally and economically. And if you are a political opponent, you are fair game to be persecuted. And in the instance, in the news recently, prosecuted. And so that's what I mean by... And Donald Trump, when he said he was going to drain the swamp, what he meant was draining out this sort of status quo, the power structure that's there, the ruling class. And that doesn't just mean politicians. It means the bureaucracy. It means the media. It means the lobbyist class. It means in a newly developing power in this country, the big tech. It just means all these people that have assumed to themselves this sort of aristocratic status where we are a law unto ourselves and we're allowed to do basically whatever we want. We're going to clean that out. That is not the American ethos. That is not the American dream. The American dream is that you can come from any background, and if you work hard and if you're talented, and you can make it. But we're seeing that play out in our society less and less.
Yeah, the swamp hasn't given up without a fight, has it?
No, and no aristocracy ever does. I mean, these people, this is the real hatred for Donald Trump. I mean, I know he's brash and sometimes he's not the most gracefully mannered person, but that is not the source of their real hatred. The real hatred is he is a threat to this fiefdom that they've built for themselves, because he really means it when he says, I want to try to drain the swamp.
Well, and let me just say this too. What you're saying is exactly what I've heard from Bill Federer and David Barton. Do you know those two gentlemen, Mr. Hauser? Do you know Bill Federer?
Yes.
Yeah, great guys.
Yes.
And folks, if you're just tuning in, Alex McFarland here. This is the American Family Radio Network. Our guest that we're learning from tonight is Jon Anthony Hauser. He is the author of the book, The Destruction of Liberty, the Creation of the American Socialist Aristocracy. By the way, where may people buy this book, Mr. Hauser?
You can find it on Amazon. You can find it at Xulon Press. That's Xulon Press. They have it on their online bookstore. You can go onto my website and hit a button, and it's available. It will take you straight to a page where you can look at what's offered, whether it be a paperback or hardback or even an ebook. And that website is www.jahauser.com.
Mm-hmm. Both my friends Bill Federer and David Barton, both incredibly respected historians, experts on the Constitution and the development of America. I had Bill Federer on a program a few days ago, and he said that, like, he said several dynamics are at play, like when, Tsarist Russia fell to the Bolshevik, communists. Russia had a rich Christian history, but it was kind of at a low ebb, and there was all this promise of equality, and masses of the underclasses believed the communists. Give more and more power to us because we got your back. And of course that's not true. And there's always this aristocracy. There's the elites and the proletariats. There's the upper class. I think about like this. The very same people that say open the border and defund the police, well, they live in gated communities. Nancy Pelosi and AOC and Chuck Schumer, they travel, they themselves, with a security detail. And I think about, like as Bill Federer said, one rule for me and a different set of rules for thee. And the social justice woke left today, it's the same way. That's why, if you would speak to this, the people that just think we're headed for some Marxist socialist utopia, it's not going to be that way. Like you say, a two-tiered justice system, a multi-tiered economic system. The socialists sell their worldview on promises of equality, but I think very quickly, people find out it's not the promise that they were told.
Well, yeah, and that, we're watching the classic socialist playbook unfold in front of our very eyes. Again, every socialist regime that has ever come to power, whether it be the Bolsheviks in Russia, who eventually became the Soviet Union, or the Nazis in Germany, or Castro in Cuba, or Venezuela today, they all came to power in the wake of chaos and economic disaster. And we see, they deliberately sow chaos. They deliberately encourage rioting and all the other kinds of things that we've seen in the last 4 years. We've seen it now on college campuses regarding Free Palestine, which is no longer about Free Palestine. It's about anti-Semitism and ultimately anti-USA. But the reason they do that is because they drive society to the brink of dissolution with chaos and intimidation and fear. And then when society doesn't feel like it can take it anymore, they step forward with their solution. They say, you know what? We will assert control. We'll look out for you. We will guarantee your security. And at that point, there's enough of the population willing to say, okay, I just want somebody to clamp down on the chaos here. And so they do that with perfection. When socialists come to power, they clamp down.
So the question is, forgive me, we'll have to come back after this break. Do you have hope that America, can the United States be the exception, in spite of the chaos, in spite of the disorder into which they want to insert new order? Do you have hope that America can withstand and remain a constitutional republic? We're going to come back, folks. Jon Anthony Hauser, author, historian, The Destruction of Liberty. Let's hope it'll be the preservation of liberty. But stay tuned. We're going to take calls, too. By the way, the number, 888-589-8840.
A Discipleship Minute with Joseph Parker.
The most exciting, fulfilling, and satisfying life you can possibly live is the life you live as you walk out God's call on your life. The wisest and best life you can possibly live is the life of embracing and running after the call of God. But His calling on your life must be accepted and then lived out faithfully. You can accept His calling and live it out by the power of the Holy Spirit and become a great blessing to the world. Or you can run from your calling. However, doing so will only lead to a very frustrated, unfulfilled life. It will result in a waste of a lot of money, energy, and time if you run from your calling. And be aware of this, wasted time is wasted life. Then maybe after years of frustration, if you live long enough, maybe you can say, okay, God, I will now do what you told me to do years ago. The Word of God tells us many times in one form or another, fear not. Many people are very fearful about some of the many perils and dangerous happenings that are going on in the world. Psalm 91 verses 1 and 2 tell us, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in him I will trust. I'm Joseph Parker, and we here at the American Family Association would like to remind you, fear not, put your trust in the Lord. We'd like to both encourage and challenge you to aggressively put your faith to work. And one way to do that is to pray Psalm 91 daily for yourself and your family, and keep your trust in him. If you'd like to get a copy of the Psalm 91 prayer for yourself, email us here at psalm91@afa.net. Again, that's psalm91@afa.net.
American Family Association President Tim Wildman.
Why does AFA exist? Well, we're here to inform, equip, and activate individuals and families to transform the culture. We want to make an impact on our country for Christ. That's the reason my dad, Don Wildman, started this ministry 40 plus years ago. Dad was concerned about the direction America was headed, and he was determined to do something about it. Maybe that describes you today. If it does, I want to strongly encourage you to consider a charitable gift annuity to American Family Association Foundation. This will benefit you, and it will ensure that we stay in the fight for a long, long time to come. That's the AFA Foundation.
Call the AFA Foundation at 800-326-4543, extension 345. That's 800-326-4543, extension 345.
Shining light into the darkness. This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the program. Alex McFarland here. We're talking with Jon Hauser. You know, in a way, it's ironic that we're having this conversation, the destruction of American liberty. Folks, guess what happened on this date, June 13, 1963? A date, to paraphrase FDR, a date that will live in infamy. On this day, and it really is an antecedent factor as to why we are where we are. On this date in 1963, June 13, public school prayer and Bible reading was outlawed by the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, you could think about that in Russia or China, but in America, unbelievable. And our children, generations of American children, spend more hours under the influence of the public school classroom, a very ideological-driven public school classroom, more than with their parents, more than with certainly the Sunday school teachers or the pastor. So June 13, 1963, the day that Bible reading and prayer was outlawed in public schools, contributing factors to where we are. But we are talking about, I ultimately believe, folks, this is a message of hope because you can make a difference. You can pray, you can vote, you can be informed, you can influence others. And so we're talking with Jon Hauser, who's giving us, in my opinion, a much-needed wake-up call. If you want to join in the conversation, the number is 888-589-8840. Mr. Hauser, again, thank you for being with us, and thank you for the book you've written about the warning of the encroachment of socialism. Appreciate you.
Again, I'm very, very privileged to be here and blessed to be here, so thank you as well.
Yeah. So I was thinking about something during the break. You know, when other countries have fallen to socialism and then communism, were there any Jon Hausers that wrote books? Do you know of any historically, like in pre-communist Russia, were there any voices crying in the wilderness, hey, wait, we don't want to go this way? Just like, there's David Barton, there's Bill Federer, there has been Tony Perkins, there's been Chuck Colson. In the countries that fell to Marxism, were there any warning shots by people saying, hey, let's turn the car around?
Yeah, there were. In Russia, you had the Kerensky government, which eventually was crushed by the Bolsheviks, and in Germany, you had the Weimar Republic, which was eventually crushed by the Nazis. But I think the reason I'm hopeful for the United States and that this will not happen to us is because I truly believe we have a unique and special history and a unique and special founding, which has led us to be a very first time ever, maybe the only time ever in history, a nation which has an ethos which is counter to the sort of forces which allowed authoritarianism to eventually triumph. The United States has a founding which is, to me, it was pure genius. The founding fathers were the only, I think, creators of a nation who effectively took into account human nature. And what I mean by that
Amen.
is human nature.
Preach it.
So their basic philosophy was that we as fallen beings, and whatever the left wants to tell you, the founding fathers were God-fearing, God-believing people. And they did not create a secular nation. They created a nation based on Christian values, culture, and principles. But they saw the fallenness of human nature, which is why they knew that the creation of the Constitution had to be, for it to be a restricting document that counters human nature. The only way socialism can work is if all human beings in authority act in an altruistic manner. And that is simply not a reliable way to govern people. It's not realistic. Human beings are fallen creatures, and those who are in authority are fallen creatures. So the Constitution is a document designed to curb the ability of government and those in government to abuse power. And socialism is the exact opposite. It is an ideology based on the unfettered ability of those in power to exercise that power. So there's the dichotomy. In the United States, in America, we have a tradition of sort of rebelliousness. And yeah, it gets us into a little bit of trouble here and there. We had the Wild West and all that. But there's still that grain of, hey, you can't always tell me what to do kind of thing that we've got going on. And I think it leads us to, at times at least, and hopefully, and especially at a time like this, enough of us anyways, to say, you know what, we're not willing to give our freedoms over to you. You can promise the world to us, but we have seen it too often now that you cannot deliver, and I am not willing to put my future and the future of my children and my family in your hands. In the United States, in America, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is huge. You nailed something that doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion, that the founders understood human nature, and they took that into account when they were crafting our government. And I think about the fact that, that very famous quote by John Adams. John Adams said that our Constitution is designed only for a moral and religious people. But I want to give the larger context to that quote. John Adams said, we have no government armed with a power capable of contending with human passions unbridled by morality and religion. And he went on and he said, look, basically sin. avarice, ambition, revenge, all these things would break the strongest cords of our Constitution like a whale going through a net, except human passions are bridled by morality and religion. And that's why it's been so insidious, folks. The banning of the display of the Ten Commandments, kids being taught just secular worldview, and that, I'll put it this way, Mr. Hauser. I'm on the road traveling, speaking. 10 years ago, I used to say the core value of this generation was sexual license. And today I say the core value is just license. Just, hey, I'll do whatever, whenever. So much to say, folks. This is Alex McFarland. You're listening to the American Family Radio Network. Our guest, Jon Hauser, author of the book, The Destruction of Liberty. I want to take a couple of calls. We're going to go to Texas. Kenneth in Texas, thank you for holding. Thank you for listening. And welcome to our conversation with author Jon Hauser.
Yes, good afternoon. I found it interesting that I'm confused. I find it interesting that I'm confused. Why is it that we know from history that Stalin was brought to power by communist ideals taught to the people by teachers and professors? And who were the first people that Stalin killed? Teachers and professors. The same thing happened with Che and Castro. Who were the first people that were either disappeared or put into prison? Teachers and professors. And they brought Marxism to colleges in the United States in the 1920s, and they've been teaching it ever since. And they don't. These same people that are standing up here preaching socialism today to our kids, anarchy to our kids. When and if, God forbid, there was ever a Bolshevik type revolution and somebody stepped up, who would be the first? Who would be the first people executed? Do they not learn from history? Do they not even know history? Didn't the Pilgrims try communal living, socialism?
Oh, they did.
And
yeah.
people went hungry.
And it failed.
So I'm going to get off of here and let me know what you think.
Hey, Kenneth, you make some great points, and and it's like professors today. Look, folks, and I love education. I love America, but I've spoken or debated on 200 American university campuses, about 50% of which were Christian schools, sometimes infected with wokeness. But the secular schools where I've spoken, Mr. Hauser, to the caller's point, so many professors are basically the propaganda ministers for Marxism. And, God forbid, but if we became some communist police state, look, any voices of dissent would swiftly be dispensed with, as we've seen historically many times. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would. And the problem is that the socialists have taken a somewhat different tack in the United States than they did in other countries, whereas in other countries they killed the professors and teachers, rounded them up and sent them off to the Gulag archipelago or whatever you. In this country, they simply co-opted them. I would say, brainwashed them. I mean, it is very difficult. I was on a college campus 35, years ago, and I saw the bias then. I saw the liberal left-leaning, but at least conservative and Christian values were tolerated. Now it is absolutely where, it's almost 33% of college students now think it is legitimate to do violence against those you disagree with. And I mean, Christian values have been demonized to the point where it's almost a non-existent voice on some campuses. So rather than exterminating what used to be called the intelligentsia, they have co-opted them. They've brought them over to their side, and we conservatives watched it happen and did very little to stop it. Now, I don't think that's necessarily the case anymore, and I don't think it's too late. But we have a pretty big hole to dig out of. And I would say, to Kenneth in Texas, it is true that if you deprive a people of its history, they're lost. And the left in this country does everything it can to erase our legitimate history and replace it with their own rewritten history. That's what the 1619 Project is all about. That's why you see them ever eager to tear down statues, not just of Confederate generals anymore, but anybody. They want to tear down statues of Jefferson and before Washington. So,
hold that thought. I want to try to get a call in before our next break. I want to go to West Virginia. Ed in West Virginia, thanks for holding. Welcome.
Hi, Alex. Thanks for taking my call. I've talked to a lot of. I'm approaching 70. I've talked to a lot of people my age, and I think there's a lot of apathy for people my age in not making the situation that we're facing right now more realistic and taking seriously to the next generation. And I hear some of the people, and I have a lot of younger family members and friends who just they don't care. They don't care. And I think my opinion is that my generation at my age is not communicating well with the younger generation to understand what we're facing. And that's my statement.
Yeah, I agree. 20 years ago, Ed, I went to work for James Dobson at Focus on the Family. And it was one of the great honors of my life. I love Dr. Dobson, and really the years I worked at Focus on the Family shaped me. But the pastor that I was under at that point really kind of almost reprimanded me. He said, "Alex, James Dobson, he's an alarmist." He said, "All that stuff, you have to understand, gay marriage will never happen in America," he told me. He said, I'm just worried Dobson is just one of these, America's in trouble, America's going to be socialist, homosexuality is a threat to our religious liberty and freedom of speech. Why are you going to go to work for that great alarmist? And do you know what, and John, you can weigh in too, but Chuck Colson, Jerry Falwell, James Dobson, the founder of the American Family Association, Don Wildman, I had the privilege of meeting him quite a number of times. D. James Kennedy, I met many times. Adrian Rogers, Phyllis Schlafly. A lot of these people that were the great conservative voices beginning in the late 70s, they, in one way or another, that they all said, look, we tried to issue the cry of warning, but, Chuck Colson said to me, if anything, we understated the big threat to American Judeo-Christian constitutional liberties. Hey, hold this thought. Jon Hauser, J.A. Hauser, The Destruction of Liberty, the Creation of the American Socialist Aristocracy. We'll talk about this book and what this means, but what we can all do about it for God and country. Stay tuned. We've got a brief break. This is the American Family Radio Network. Alex McFarland saying stay tuned.
Interested in seminary but don't think it will work in this season in life? Wesley Biblical Seminary offers flexible options that allow you to take classes live, no matter where you are. At WBS, we don't just educate people, we develop trusted leaders for faithful churches. It's time for you to respond to the calling God has on your life. Take classes from an institution that you can trust for a calling that will not go away. Learn more about your opportunities at wbs.edu. That's wbs.edu.
Hello, I'm Sam Rohr, president of the American Pastors Network, a growing national network of pastors committed to the authority of Scripture and preaching the whole counsel of God. We believe biblical obedience is the foundation for revival, and impacting our culture for Christ is our duty. For too long, the pulpits of America have been silent on the important issues such as marriage and family and assault on our liberty. Join us in the battle for truth on Stand in the Gap Weekend, Sunday evenings at 6 p.m. on American Family Radio, and visit us at AmericanPastorsNetwork.org.
Men need the Word. This is David Wheaton, host of The Christian Worldview. We're coming up on the day where we annually celebrate fathers. The sad irony is that men and fathers are often blamed and marginalized for the ills in our society. For their part, too many men have allowed themselves to become feminized and passive in the way they think and live. Instead of displaying traits of biblical manhood, men are content to sit back, watch the game, and have women fill their God-given role. In His inspired and authoritative Word, God provides the truth men need to be saved and sanctified. That's what Jesus prayed. Sanctify them in the truth. Your Word is truth. Hear our most recent program about men needing God's Word at thechristianworldview.org, and then join us this weekend for another topic that will sharpen your worldview.
Listen to The Christian Worldview with David Wheaton, Saturday mornings at 8 Central on American Family Radio.
Let's see, if something costs less, but people are happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that is MediShare. And maybe you've heard switching to MediShare to pay for health care can save many families up to $500 a month, and that's huge, but it's also true people are way more satisfied after making the switch, too. The member satisfaction rate for MediShare is double that of the typical health insurance plan. Double. MediShare works, too. It's been around for 30 years. Members have shared more than $5 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network. So, yeah, really, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care. So if you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan you're happy with, you can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. See what you can save. This is a very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. Call 833-44-BIBLE. That's 833-44-BIBLE. 833-44-BIBLE.
Helping women save babies. That's the goal of the Safe Haven Law, and there's an Indiana ministry using it with effective results. Safe Haven Baby Boxes has patented and produced safe and comfortable medical bassinets and located them outside designated safe places. Parents can leave an infant where it will be recovered by trained personnel in just a couple of minutes. You really need to know about this life-saving ministry. Read Indiana Ministry Saving Abandoned Babies at afa.net/The Stand.
The Hamilton Quarter podcast and 1-minute commentaries are available at afr.net. Back to the Hamilton Quarter on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the program. Alex McFarland here, a passionate Christian and a patriotic American. I hope you are too. Hey, by the way, we're going to resume our conversation with author Jon Hauser. But let me make a little announcement here. Some of you may know that over the last 20 years, I've been privileged to lead a lot of worldview conferences. We call those conferences Truth for a New Generation. Abe Hamilton has been one of my speakers. Chuck Colson, James Dobson, Eric Metaxas, Dinesh D'Souza, Tim Wildman, I mean, you name it, we've brought together great speakers. Well, we're working on a major national worldview conference, fall of 2025, in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So next week, I'm going to be in Myrtle Beach, and next Thursday, I'm going to have an organizational meeting with any interested persons. So next Thursday, June 20th, if you want to come to Myrtle Beach, 10 a.m., I'm going to be at a wonderful venue called Ground Zero. It's a Christian youth center in a restored theater. I've spoken there many times. Next Thursday, June 20th, 10 a.m., Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I'm going to have my first organizational meeting for the 2025 TNG conference. And then that weekend, I'll be preaching at a wonderful church called Sacristy Baptist Church on Sunday, June 23rd. And then I'm going to our second of 7 summer youth camps. Anyway, all of that, if you go to my website, which is alexmcfarland.com, I've got a form on there, info@alexmcfarland.com, INFO. If you want to stay in touch, because what we do, we pray, we educate, we inspire, we mobilize, we equip people, and this will be a big conference. I know it's many months from now, but anyway, come out to our organizational meeting Thursday, June 20th, 10 a.m. at Ground Zero in Myrtle Beach, and let's encourage each other in this wonderful, as the founders would say, the spirited contest of liberty. Well, we're going to continue with callers and our guest, Frank in Kentucky. Frank, thank you for holding, and welcome to our conversation with author Jon Hauser.
Hi, Brother Alex.
Yes, hello.
Reason I'm calling, I don't know if this is on Tony Perkins or American Family Radio. I was listening to this lady. She was talking about getting school parents back in, I think, Louisiana schools. You didn't hear anything about that?
I did hear in Louisiana that they were posting the 10 Commandments in all public schools. Now, prayer, I don't know. Actually, students do have the right to voluntary prayer. Can't be, led or coerced. But do you know anything, Mr. Hauser? I believe there was a bill that has passed in Louisiana about the 10 Commandments being posted in all public schools. But either prayer or the 10 Commandments, do you know anything about that, Mr. Hauser?
I believe it was the 10 Commandments that's allowed to be posted, and of course there's a huge uproar about that. But I would say just generally across our nation, we need to introduce new things like that, or reintroduce things like that into the public schools. But I'm very pessimistic about the public schools being able to change course from what they've become, which is why I'm a huge proponent of school choice. I do not believe that we can force change in our public school systems from within at any point. They are so controlled by the unions, the teachers union, which is dead set on removing our children, not just from the orbit of their nuclear family, but from any higher authority other than the state. That is their goal.
Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, tomorrow night, folks, forgive me, John, for interrupting, but tomorrow night on the Hamilton Corner, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, I'll have on Colonel Ray Moore of the Exodus Mandate, and that is our subject, the state of the public schools, and that's on the Hamilton Corner tomorrow night. By the way, Mr. Hauser, now listen to this, and you are right. The teachers' unions, they're inherently in the hip pocket of socialist, globalist, Marxist. In Raleigh, North Carolina, listen to this. This was, I'm going to say, 8 years ago. There was a big gathering of the North Carolina public school teachers, administrators, and it was a very hush-hush meeting. The media was not allowed in. Nobody was supposedly allowed to take any photos or anything like that. But somebody shared a photo with me. The theme, now, all the teachers in North Carolina, the public school, what would you think the theme would be? Educating our students, right? No. The theme was, listen, spread the gay. And I've got a photograph of this big banner, spread the gay, and somebody was giving this seminar, insert LGBTQ trans content everywhere possible. And there were even seminars, how to put more gay content in history, mathematics. I mean, You would think math deals with numbers, right? No. Basically, they were trying to imbue all of the academic courses with more pro-gay content. A theme of the teachers, spread the gay. That's why I've challenged parents, get your kids out of the public school classroom. But anyway, Frank, thank you. In Louisiana, HB 71, and of course, opponents are, having an uproar. But that was a bill in Louisiana that the Ten Commandments had to be posted. Interestingly, and folks, I talk about this a lot when I teach or debate on political science. To mention the Ten Commandments or morality, now to even assert that gender is binary, to say that there are males and females. See, the left will say, you're imposing your religion, and the First Amendment prohibits that. Well, I've asked this on 200 American university campuses. I've never gotten an answer. I'll say, who wrote the First Amendment? Even the professors don't know. Well, the man that wrote the First Amendment was named Fisher Ames, A-M-E-S. And Fisher Ames said, quote, I would that the Bible be taught in all public schools, for it is the best vehicle for teaching morality to young people. And here's my question. I always ask, how is it that 21st century secularists think they know more about the application of the First Amendment than the man who wrote the First Amendment? Fisher Ames, who wrote the First Amendment, didn't think that teaching the Ten Commandments would violate the non-establishment clause of his First Amendment. But I digress. John, before we take the next call, do you have any comments that I've sort of run away with the conversation here? Anything you want to add in before we go to another call?
I would say that the ignorance of the history of the First Amendment and the person who wrote it is intentional. And the reason why contemporary leftists don't know it is because they've intentionally erased history. They don't want anyone to know that. And they've attempted to shape it to their own narrative, which means rewriting it, deconstructing it, and rewriting it, as they have rewritten the entire history of our country. That's how you bring down a country, is you delegitimize its founding and its history.
Yeah, true. And deconstruction, folks, that's a word you need to know, because in many ways we're in a philosophical battle. And, the Marxist and the atheist, they were very much influenced by, there was a guy named Ludwig Wittgenstein, and he taught that words don't have meaning. And then there was another guy that, Martin Heidegger, and in economics and certainly in education, Heidegger was very, he is so influential that, they feel like it's their duty to deconstruct and reconstruct. In other words, insert disorder to create new order. And John, that's not just in the classroom, that's on Main Street, isn't it?
Yes, again, classic socialist, or in what they call themselves now, progressives. That's the playbook: deconstruct, destroy, cause chaos and intimidation and violence, and then step in. When everything's on the brink of collapse, you step in, assert control, which is what they've always wanted. Socialists hate free elections. They hate free debate. They hate a free press. They're all about control. And we watch that. You watch it on college campuses today. These kids have no concept of what a college is supposed to be about, which is the free exchange of ideas. No. If you disagree with someone, shout them down, cause violence, cause a riot. We're watching the seeds of it right now.
And, folks, this is going to blow your mind. Think about this. And then I'm going to go to Kay in Kansas. But So there was this German philosopher. He was a pagan. His name was Martin Heidegger. He died in 1976. But he encouraged, and this is part of the philosophy of wokeness and critical theory, but Martin Heidegger, he encouraged individuals and societies to deconstruct, tear down, question everything, believe nothing, deconstruct truth, and then build back better. Now, where, I ask you, have you heard the phrase build back better? I mean, it made my skin crawl. I mean, look, I did a master's degree in philosophy, and I studied all these pagans that gave us they destroyed the Western world, and they're trying to destroy America. When the Biden administration, over and over, they would say, build back better. That is straight from the lexicon of atheistic, communist, German philosopher Martin Heidegger. But Kay in Kansas, I wanted to get your question in before time fleets away. Kay in Kansas, thanks for holding, and welcome to our program.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I think the bottom line is that, as Hosea 4:6 says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And Satan understands very well how to bring God's wrath on this land, his desolation. And that is there's many, many roads to that point. But the primary heat of the battle is the shedding of innocent blood. And God only gives one solution for that, and that's by the blood of them who shed it. And we need to keep our eyes on that, and that is where, God said in Jeremiah, he was amazed he couldn't find a man. Well, he had Jeremiah, who was the man he was looking for, a man to rally other men for justice. And that's, God's just amazed that they chose death. His people, his men, chose death. And God's looking for men. I know he's calling men. And will they answer? Thank you.
Bless you. Well, and Mr. Hauser, I want to give you a lengthy time to respond, but I was looking, the caller mentioned Hosea 4:6, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me. Now here, this sounds like America. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of God. Give us some hope about the pathway back. Jon Hauser, author of The Destruction of Liberty. What is some hope for a pathway back?
I think the hope for the pathway back is the newest generation now of young people who, by all accounts, seem to be rejecting this dogmatic call to the left, who basically don't trust the media anymore. And by the way, most of them don't deserve to be trusted. They don't trust authority figures because we've for the longest time in this country, we're led to believe that, if you saw it on the news, it was true. If the government told you it was true. Well, we found out, I think, that the greatest eye-opening event in the last half century was the COVID.
Yeah.
pandemic.
Oh, my goodness.
And we found
hey,
out
we're
that
almost out of time. Forgive me. Where can people find your book? Jon Hauser. Out of time. I'm so sorry.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family